All right, welcome to another episode of Sales Pipeline Radio. I am your host, Matt Hines. So excited to have you all here for another episode. As we record this today, it is now Q4. There's good news and bad news, Sarika. The good news is you're back to zero. The bad news is you're back to zero, and you got to sort of build from here. But we're here to help you. So if you are joining us live on Sales Pipeline Radio today, if you're joining us live on LinkedIn or YouTube, thank you so much for making us part of your workday and your work week. If you've got a comment, if you've got a question for our guest, if you've got a rebuttal, those are all valid. You throw those in and we're going to see those. We can respond to those. We can bring those up on screen and make you part of the show. If you're listening or watching on demand, thank you so much. Over 250,000 people are downloading Sales Pipeline Radio. So excited to have you joining in that group. And every episode, past, present, and future, available at salespipelineradio.com. Really excited to have our guest today, Sarika Garg. She is the GM at HubSpot. And I missed you a couple weeks ago at Inbound, and I feel really bad about that. I wasn't there for the entire conference, but boy, there was a buzz at Moscone Center for a good 3 days. Maybe just as we kick off, just talk a little bit about sort of your reflections on Inbound 25.
So, Matt, I am so sorry to have missed you too. Inbound was amazing, and it was amazing for me for two reasons. One is it was my first Inbound. Okay, so I can maybe tell you a little bit about that, and then I'd love to maybe reflect on Inbound as well. So it was my first Inbound because I actually joined HubSpot 9 months ago through the acquisition of my company Cashflow,
Yep.
and so in the last 11 months all we did was put our heads down and build a product and launch it at Inbound. So Inbound was amazing because we launched a net new product, which is a CPQ product for HubSpot. It was also really special because I think it was really like, HubSpot coming into its own on the AI story, on the AI, on how AI can actually help businesses and having products to show that,
Yep.
right? So there was a smart CRM, which is sort of like the baseline. There is a data hub, which allows you to bring all your data in because AI only works well when it has context and data. And then all the wonderful agents and the AI enabled hubs that we have, right? So
Yeah, it
it was
was.
pretty fabulous.
And another thing I like about Inbound is, there's a lot of user conferences that feel like a product showcase, and there was plenty of HubSpot showcased, but I feel like Inbound has always been and continues to be just a great event for marketers, right? Even if you didn't attend the sessions, the networking, the quality of the people there, the learnings that you get in line for lunch, the learnings you get just waiting to get into a packed breakout room. I love that, and so congrats on an amazing show. I want to talk about relationship building and sales relationships in the age of AI. So I think we're seeing a lot more AI generated messages. We're seeing a lot more automation. There's pros and cons to that. But I'm curious for you, like, how do you define a real sales relationship in 2025? Like, what are some of the signals and best practices to make sure that as we're selling, we're still bringing the human into it?
So I think we're going to see a lot of bad usage of AI, but
Yeah.
actually AI can really make things so much better for our relationships. And I love the sort of message that we have as HubSpot, which is it is all about hybrid teams,
Mm-hmm.
right? AI is actually your team member that's helping you to become better. And so, whether it's like helping you to go do research on a customer or whether it's to reach out mass, it actually should enable you to then free you up from all the sort of busy work that both marketers and sellers have to do today to actually do meaningful work. That's what really excites me. And in the CPQ launch that we did, we really focused on that too.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yeah, I mean, I think about all the things that you have to do as a seller to be successful. And I can't remember who did it a couple of years ago. It might have been Google, it might have been Salesforce. Someone did the math and said the typical seller spends about 25% of their day actually selling, right? So literally 3/4 of their time is spent getting ready to sell. It's writing proposal, it's researching prospects, it's figuring out who to call and what to say. And there's so much of that work that now with the right rules and governance can be automated and been done for the sellers. And I think it's gonna create the opportunity for us to be more human, more valuable in the process, and allow the sellers to be more successful as well.
So Matt, as a business owner, I actually had to market myself. I had to sell myself. I had to
Mm-hmm.
do everything. So I sort of like very inherently understand the pain of being, especially a seller, is really really hard, because so much of what you do is the sort of 75% of the manual tasks,
Yeah.
and actually things are becoming also tougher, right? And maybe, I know you like stats, so here's one stat which is really interesting. 72% of B2B deals, B2B sellers say that the buyer journey is becoming more complex. That means there are more people on the buyer side that they need to convince.
Right.
There are more gates that they need to overcome. And half the time, the seller becomes a project manager who's
Mm-hmm.
just trying to manage all these strings of conversations. And I think I like to think of this as we're living in this weird paradox world where in some areas we have seen this being overcome. So
Yeah.
I mean, you were in San Francisco, you probably rode a Waymo, and we have self-driving cars now, and it works, and it's
Mm-hmm.
amazing. And yet when you're buying some piece of software, it's all this email back and forth, and sometimes you're using PDFs, and PDFs is not automation. PDFs is not agentic in any way.
No.
And so you get these PDFs that go out of sync because you have so many people on the other side. I actually spent a lot of my time sitting in back rooms talking to customers and partners. I had this one customer, they pulled out, they said, "Do you want to see what our quotes look like?" And they opened up an Excel sheet and they
Yeah.
had line item out of line item. And
Yeah.
basically, the seller literally uses that to
Yeah.
share with the customer. And it was really, really difficult to watch some of this.
It
Yeah.
was a surprisingly short number of years ago, and this was in a sort of a mining and manufacturing company, when the head of sales said, "Would you like to see my database?" And I said, "Sure." He went and brought me a shoebox. So I mean, so that's worse than what you just talked about. But I think, like, when we think about the systems we need to support us as sellers, like you gave that great stat around sort of how complex the buying journey has become. I hear a
Yeah.
lot of sellers talk about the complexity of their own selling process, the project management they have to do internally to get a proposal reviewed and get legal involved in procurement, and all the things it takes to orchestrate the seller and the buyer side. It just speaks to how important it is to have the systems that understand that complexity and can make it more powerful for the sellers to do what they need to do.
True. We need smarter systems, right?
Yeah.
So one of our thoughts is, you mentioned that sellers spend so much time writing a proposal. Well, every seller I've ever met, they're not really great at creating proposals. They're actually great at building relationships or solving for the customer. So why do we expect them to create that proposal? Why couldn't we actually listen to or have their call recordings, like unstructured data or
Right.
data that's been exchanged between the seller and the buyer in emails, actually help generate that proposal? With
Mhm.
AI, you can actually do that. And so that's sort of one of the things that we talked about, is we actually have means now and the technology to shortcut a lot of the work, that the really difficult work that a seller has to do. The second one is approvals, of course,
Mhm.
right? Like,
Mhm.
how many times have you met a seller who is just actually just chasing internal approvals versus like being able to focus on the buyer and their problem? And I think there are ways that we can actually be much smarter. I think
Yeah.
AI can make it much smarter by actually bubbling up insights to do better.
Talking today on Sales Pipeline Radio with Sarika Garg. She is the GM and VP of Commerce Hub at HubSpot. Let's talk a little bit about inbound, talking about systems and needing smarter systems. And I do feel like I've had a couple CMOs tell me this, that they feel like we're in a bit of this trough of disillusionment in AI adoption. And it's no fault of the tools. It's just the fact that the tools are moving very quickly. We've gone from, well, let's experiment with AIs, to random acts of AI, to some people using it, some people not using it. So there's this gap we really need to help people with, that goes from the opportunity to real, repeatable, sticky use of AI. And this isn't, to me, I mean, I think you got to stop thinking about AI as a tool and start thinking about it as infrastructure that mostly is working on your behalf to help you decide what to do next. Are you seeing any evidence of that gap as well? And sort of, what are some of your best practices and advice for companies and leaders to sort of bridge that and to better leverage the tools?
I think it's very difficult right now to be a seller or a marketer or even any human being, because things are changing so fast and it's really hard to keep up with it.
Mm-hmm.
And I think what we're trying to do is make sure we can be really good partners in explaining how to leverage AI to be your partner to be better, right? And there are parts where it's more of an assistant, and there are parts where it can actually take over whole jobs, right? And if I really take the example of the context that I live in, I talked about this creation of a proposal without you having to have a cold start problem of starting from scratch,
Yeah.
right? Or actually being able to manipulate that proposal with an assistant on the side. That's a typical example of an assistant. But we also built something which was much more agentic in nature, which is basically like free form. It can sort of work on its own and is
Yeah.
almost doing the job of like a mini helper,
Mm-hmm.
or a mini person that can work for you. And the example of that I can give you is when we share the proposal or the quote with a customer, we actually have an agent that's attached to that quote. So um, every customer has many questions, right? Some of these questions are, how are you a best fit for my problem that I have? But
Mm-hmm.
then there are other questions like, what are the terms? What is the renewal terms? What is your payment policies?
Right.
These are what is, give me some more descriptions of your product. These are very repeatable questions, which oftentimes the seller actually is not very good at, because they
Mm-hmm.
actually are not experts in that.
Right.
And this is where I feel this is a very good example of where AI can actually help to answer some of those questions,
Yep.
right? And it can actually work 24 hours, which the seller does not work 24 hours, right? So to me, this is the way to think about AI. How can it help you on things that you're not actually the best at,
Yeah.
right?
Well, and I think about how much time it takes to coordinate a seller, having that technical conversation, finding a sales engineer, getting them involved in the conversation to answer those technical questions. I mean, think about the role of agents in that, where you talked about procurement, you talked about legal review, you talked about sort of we talked about the technical questions in the sales engineer side. I mean, these are all opportunities to have agents that, just to your point, that are 24/7, that are at the prospects and the seller's disposal. And that
Yeah.
gets to be a pretty exciting thing. Like I think we're pretty far away in enterprise from having robots sell to robots, but having robots intimately involved in parts of the process to give greater confidence to the
Yes.
buyer and the seller feels not only achievable, but feels like that could be a sooner versus later opportunity.
Yeah. So, in my role, I try to spend as much time as I can with sellers and sales leaders. So,
Mm-hmm.
I was actually talking to Matt Stone, who actually runs our whole mid market sales team. And I asked him, do you think we could actually have an agent for smaller deals as well as larger deals? Like, think of like $1 million deal, a 500K, 100K deal, 30K deal, or, $1,000. And he said, there is no reason for the seller to not have an agent that can actually help answer repeatable questions that actually are in some knowledge base
Right.
or is in terms or something like that. So we're seeing this sort of a pull now from sellers saying, hey, we actually could use these tools because it will help us to focus on the relationship and on the problem solving. Yeah.
All right, so we're getting close to out of time. I've got two lightning round questions I want to
Sure.
throw at you here to have a little fun. The first one is around sales metrics. What is an overrated metric and what is an underrated metric?
um I'll give you my personal take.
Yeah.
I love the quote to close metric,
Yes.
which I think is totally underrated. And
Yep.
I think it is actually really, really important, because I can see how this is where deals stall, and for no particular reason.
Yep.
Like my whole thing is time kills deals, move fast, right?
Yep. Yep.
Overrated. I'm not sure. I'm not
Yeah.
sure. What's yours?
Mine is the marketing qualified lead. I mean,
Okay.
especially like in the traditional sort of lead based model. I mean, I think there's a lot of value in defining a consistent, like, what is a qualified lead that's like the right person, right company. I just think it's become a vanity metric for so many companies, right? They just want it to be up into the night and it become up into the right, and it becomes just not valuable at all. And so just begin, then you end up with, you take those into a board meeting, it becomes success theater, jazz hands, look what we're doing, and it's not tied to revenue. So that's I get on a high horse on that one. Okay, last question for you then. We've been talking a lot about sort of AI's role in helping sellers build relationships. What's something like it's the beginning of Q4? What's one process improvement or experiment that teams could try this quarter to start to make some progress?
I think to me, doing something like using AI for customer research. This is
Yeah.
such an obvious one for me, and it's such a hard one which takes so much time.
Hmm.
And AI is so much better at this, right? To me, I would say every seller go and like try doing that. You can just use deep research initially, right? Like just
Hmm.
use deep research, or then use whatever your company is using.
Hmm.
But to me, like I think learning something new comes from experimenting. So
Absolutely.
go experiment something small, right?
Yeah, I completely agree with that. Our team has gone through some sort of AI agent building workshops, and the gal we had to come in and help with that, she started by saying like, do something for your personal life. Like do something that you're going to be passionate about outside of work, and it's not going to help you at work right away, but it's gonna break the seal, right? It's going to let you start to see the art of the possible, right? So that meal planning tool or that plant that gardening guide with whatever it is, you're
Yeah.
like, wow, that's
Yeah.
amazing. Like then you
So
start to think about it in this context.
Matt, I'm doing a whole house renovation using because of ChatGPT. So yes,
I love it.
very helpful.
I love it. Well, I know you're super busy. You got to go. Thank you so much for being part of this, and sharing your insights. And yeah, thanks for joining us today.
Well, thank you for inviting me.
Awesome. And thank you to the HubSpot team, Mackenzie, and everyone on the back end for making all this possible. Appreciate y'all very much. Thanks everyone for joining another episode of Sales Pipeline Radio. We'll be back next week with another great guest. Until then, have a great rest of your week. We'll see you soon. Take care.